Got back from a backpacking trip and my order from Ripstop by the Roll has come in. So I'm going to be making a new hammock and I'm going to be making an underquilt stuffed with down feathers. And as I'm learning a new skill and hobby, something like a learning disability that I have has sort of fleshed itself out again. And so this is a little bit more of a philosophical video. It's not about sewing or backpacking, but I want to explain something that I learned about myself that maybe you need to learn about yourself, and maybe it'll help you. So I was a horrible student in elementary, junior high, and high school. Teachers always said to my mom, oh, he's really smart, he just won't apply himself, and these sorts of things. And later in life, I realized that I had something of like a learning disability. Now, I'm not saying officially a learning disability. I'm not trying to insult anyone who has a real disability like dyslexia maybe, but at least a learning deficiency. And I want to explain what happened to me in school. Before I do that, I want to tell you a quick story. I was working at Volkswagen and we had a measurement lab where there was basically people who did machine type work and they took measurements down to like the millionth of an inch. And I went down there one day and I was looking for a relatively flat machine surface to do some testing on. And I asked one of the guys, I said, hey, do you guys have a table I can borrow? And he said, yeah, how about that one over there? And I said, yeah, that'll be good. I'm just looking for something nice and flat. And he said to me, he's like, well, that table is anything but flat. Now, this table happened to be like a 1-inch thick, solid stainless steel machined table with threaded holes in it for mounting things down. And so it was far flatter than any desk or table that you might have in your house. And yet here was a man, and he described this table as anything but flat. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about him, as well as the people who worked in the laboratory who live under a microscope and how they see the world from a different perspective. When we look at a table like this, we see something flat. They see like the waviness at the molecular level. And one of the things that happened to me in school is the teacher would give us, let's say, a piece of paper and a pen, and she would say, I want you to draw an isosceles triangle. Now, an isosceles triangle has two sides that are the same and one side that's different, and you mark the sides that are the same by doing that. So she would give us 30 seconds to do that, and everyone would draw something like that on their piece of paper. And I would have drawn nothing. And I looked around, and everyone had put their pens down, and were sitting there happy and content. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with me? I have no idea how I'm supposed to do this. This seems like an impossible task. And so the teacher would say, okay, time's up. And then she would say, you know, did anyone have trouble with that? And I would say, yeah, I had trouble with that. And she would say, okay, well, why don't you look at someone else's, you know, what else did everybody else do? And everybody else did that. And I would say like, oh, that's what you meant? Oh, come on. I thought you meant an actual isosceles triangle where these sides were exactly the same length and these angles were exactly the same. And so because I didn't have a protractor or a ruler, I felt like I was unable to do what the teacher had wanted. And just like that guy who saw a table and said it's anything but flat, I didn't learn about this, I didn't learn this about myself until later in life, but I looked at the world with like a more precise view than what most teachers and most students were after. And that doesn't make me better, it just makes me different. And so I thought without a protractor and a ruler, I was unable to draw an isosceles triangle. And what she really wanted was just like a quick sketch. She just wanted something like that. She didn't want something like that. She didn't want a scalene. She just wanted something roughly like that with 2 tick marks. And that was a major hang up for me in life. Especially in school, I should say. And it wasn't until I started working at Volkswagen and I started working with engineers who were more quick to pull out the protractor and ruler if you really want an isosceles triangle that I began to fit in. And so what I want to say to whoever's listening to this and watching is that the average person approaches life at a particular granularity or a particular resolution, right? They would call that a blue line. If you're the kind of person who says, well, that's not a blue line, if I zoom in enough, that's actually just a bunch of points that are close enough to one another that I see a line, then you're in good company. Maybe you'll be an engineer, and maybe you're a little bit like me. And what you need to learn, if you're still in school or still trying to learn, is that you see the world your eyes see the world, let's say, through a microscope automatically, or maybe the opposite. You see the world sort of through a telescope. You always see the bigger picture, right? And that may be hard for you as you sit under the authority of teachers or professors, because they're going to sort of say, well, that's just a blue line, and not explain that at the molecular level, it's not blue at all. And at the telescopic level, it's not a line at all, or whatever. But your brain may think that way. And that's how mine thought. And that's, I think, a big contributing factor as to why I was such a poor student, but a good employee at Volkswagen, an engineer. Because when you start recognizing that you can see the world at different depths, at different granularity levels, at different resolution levels, then you begin to analyze either your audience when you're speaking or your teacher when you're listening and say, okay, at what granularity level are they trying to talk to me? Are they asking me to pull out the microscope and recognize that this blue line is actually a series of blue pigments, little teeny tiny dots that we call pixels? Or are they just asking me to accept the fact at this granularity level that it's a line? So I'm going to do another video about sewing here in a few minutes, because I'm learning to sew because I want to build a lightweight hammock. I'm not a sewer in general. I just have this sort of need, or I have this want. And so it seems like learning a new skill is the way to do that. And as I learn this new skill and I call my mom for advice, I see that same dynamic between my teachers and I, where I want a more precise answer than what the world is typically ready and willing to give you. And it takes me back to the horrors of school, where I seem to never be able to be on the same page as the teachers. I was always, one level too high or one level too low. Again, I'm not saying better or worse, I'm just saying different. And anyway, I just want to offer that as an encouragement, maybe to you as some sort of a student, maybe to you as a parent who has a kid who's struggling, or maybe as a colleague or something like that. But people approach life at different granularity or resolution levels. And if you zoom way in, you no longer have a blue line. You have a series of blue dots. And if you zoom way out, you see no blue lines at all, just a white piece of paper. And so maybe this information will help someone adapt to someone else's communication style, or maybe it'll be an encouragement to you that you're not alone. All right, folks, take care. If you didn't like this, I get it. Give it a thumbs down. Go check out Jordan Peterson. He talks about this kind of stuff, and he's a lot smarter than me. Take care.